I know. It pronounced the lotus feet of Lord Bhagavan. Dear brothers and sisters, we have a day more for the celebration of Guru Purnima, which is the first celebration. And you find the campus being full of people, full of devotees from different places all over India and abroad. Guru Purnima is an important festival which is very well known to most of you. But all the same, the role of a guru has to be realized, felt and experienced. The role of a guru is most important for more than one reason. No doubt there is water tank there which is full of water. But for you to draw the water out of the tap, there should be some kind of connection. The tubes, the pipes laid between the tank and the tap. Unless the pipes are laid connecting the tank with the tap, you cannot draw water out of it. Similarly, the tap is the devotee. The tap is the disciple. The tap is the student, while the connecting pipe is Guru. The tank is divinity. The tank is divinity himself, full of divine truths contained there. From that tank, this doctrine, the philosophical doctrine, the spiritual content, or what you call Vedanta, flows down through the pipes, the Guru. And here is this disciple or the devotee, the tap, to draw the water, the essence out of the teachings. Therefore, no one can say that I don't need the pipe. If you don't need the pipe, you may have to climb up to the tank, which is impossible. Therefore, the Guru is very important. To know the essence and also to know the exactness or the correctness of the precepts or the principles reflected in our sacred scriptures. It's quite possible, if we go through the scriptures all by ourselves, we may be confused. Sometimes we may find some contradictions in the text itself. Because the text says God has form at one place, while the same spiritual text says God has no form in some other context. At some place it is said he has attributes, and at some other instance it maintains it has no attributes. At some place it is emphasized that we should do all kinds of rituals, all sorts of worship to experience the divine. At a later stage it says, don't do anything, give up everything. So if we read all the text all by yourself, however scholarly we are, however knowledgeable we are in Sanskrit, yet we are sure to commit some mistakes, and we are sure to be in a state of confusion as to what is correct and what is not. But on the other hand, if you listen to a guru, he will put it in such a way that the scripture is not of contradictions. All the opposites that we find in the scripture are only apparent, are only superficial. And these contradictions of the scripture are meant to cater to the needs of the aspirant. It depends upon the level of the aspirant, what level he can reach, what level he can comprehend, what method he can follow. Therefore, the scripture gives so many methods such that we will be able to reach out at least one, depending upon our own temperament, attitude. Unless Guru is there, we will not be able to make out. Because we are lost and not able to know what is to be done. Therefore, my friends, Guru Purnima is an occasion to pay our respects, obeisance to Guru, who will bring to our attention the actual truth of the scripture, the content of the scripture, the essence of the scripture, such that we'll be able to adopt in our life, such that it is practical in our life, in our sadhana. That is the purpose, that is the role of a guru in the path of spirituality. I can also help draw your attention to another role of a guru. The second role of a guru is this: we will not be able to know our own mistakes, our own faults, because all of us think that we are right and perfect. And if anyone points out, we'll make an enemy of him. Because we don't want anybody to point out anything. All in the name of freedom in particular. So we cannot bear anybody to point out any mistake or any misunderstanding. And in fact, there are none who are capable of pointing any mistake also, because the others are also equally mistaken. A blind man cannot lead another blind man. So we cannot correct another people. After all, we might speak basing on our theoretical knowledge. We may suggest basing on our textual information. But experiential knowledge is in the hands of a guru. Experiential knowledge. And out of that experiential knowledge, he disseminates. He spreads the gospel. Therefore, we are attracted towards it. A man of experience speaks from a different pedestal altogether, from a different standard altogether, from a different height altogether. That is Guru himself. To give you a concrete example, whenever Bhagavan speaks, most of the people say, he meant me. This point refers to me. My doubt is clarified. He is exactly speaking about what I need at this moment. Or most of the people say that. But it also looks funny. How do you say that it applies to you? How do you say that he means you? Well, why don't you think that it means me also? But here the point is, the experiential knowledge, all wisdom, prajnanam Brahma, is so vast that it can be individual as well as universal. Individual and universal, both aspects are taken into consideration or catered to only by an experiential guru and no one else. Individually I feel it is meant to me, but the same thing has got universal value, universal application. This is the role of a guru in being individual as well as universal. As I was telling you, he is the only one who knows where we are mistaken, where the path we have deviated from. We have deviated from the path. He exactly points out, this is the mistake where you have gone wrong. A guru is capable of that, not anybody else. It is only by the grace of Guru we will be able to win over our own pitfalls, our own weaknesses. We cannot conquer, we cannot give up our own bad habits, our own wrong thinking, our own narrow parochial attitudes, all by ourselves. Impossible. However determined you are, or rather, how determined we are. Because I am no exception in any way. And I don't claim to be sometimes, all right, let me meditate every day from this Guru Purnima. But the fact is, so many Guru Purnimas passed, but we have not started our meditation. Let me spend some time in prayer before I go to my work, or let me pray soon after I get up from bed. From this January 1st, the New Year day. Many New Year days passed, but that has not been implemented. So our individual agenda is like government policies which are never implemented. All promises are missed successfully. A promise is the one that is missed. So we could not implement anything, all of us. There may be few, I don't generalize it, there may be very, very few. If they are honest, they too will admit that they are not 100% successful. Therefore, my friends, we will not be able to give up any bad habit and will not be able to cultivate any good habit unless we have God's grace. God's grace is essential to implement, to proceed with any spiritual path. All by ourselves we cannot do. From tomorrow onwards, some people say, let me not be angry. That moment itself is angry. Right from this day, let me not interfere in others' matters. Immediately he starts interfering. It's not his mistake. We cannot do it all by ourselves unless there is somebody's help. Simple example, there is very big bag, a gunny bag full of rice. It's so heavy. I cannot lift all by myself unless somebody assists me. Similarly, unless God assists me, I cannot give up my bad habits. And I cannot start my sadhana unless He showers His blessings. Therefore, Guru Purnima is another occasion of turning to God to help us such that we take the spiritual path and that we will be away from all kinds of obstacles that are likely to come on our way. Another role of a guru is also this. It is so difficult to turn the mind. We can turn anything, but turning a mind is very difficult. Even cranes also can't do it. Electronic gadgets are useless. Turning the mind is the toughest thing. Nobody can do it. But we have only glimpses, that's all. Some taste of the inward mind. Some taste, if not total taste, if not persistent experience of the taste. We don't have it. Just glimpses. When we see Bhagavan, a little drop of nectar of experience. When we sing bhajan loudly without seeing anybody, with our closed eyes, we have drop of nectar of experience. Immediately gone, evaporated. We will be our normal personalities. This is because we need extra grace. We need extra grace. We need more of blessings from God to enjoy this persistent, blissful state of the mind. So, to turn the mind is not an easy thing. Because who is to turn the mind? I want to turn the mind. Who am I? I do not know. There are some people that say, in the earlier long back, one big engineer came here and he was telling everybody, take this, do that, fix this. He went on telling. Most of us were there just looking at him. He left. Somebody came and asked me, sir, who will do it? He said, remove it. Who is to remove? You fix. Who is to fix? Who will do it? Therefore, turn the mind good. Who is to turn the mind? Can you turn my mind? Or can I turn your mind? It's not that easy. Therefore, my friends, turning in the mind is the most essential point in the spiritual path. Without that, whatever we may do is all subsidiary, is only accessory, but not main thing. Therefore, the turning in the mind inward is possible because of grace of God only. Because mind got used to this outward tendency, this outward temperament, this outward whims and fancies, outward vagaries, that it wants to be outward immediately, while just a turn inward occasionally. Therefore, the mind which has got used to this sort of external, outward style of functioning, to turn it inward is beyond human effort. It's beyond human effort. God should help us to turn the mind inward. Because that is the only thing that is to be done in spiritual path. Because we find so much of worship done, such a big yaga done, such a big yajna done, that's all outer external. So many vegetables I brought, so many provisions I brought, so much of money I got, spent, is not cooking, is not eating, is not food. All the vegetables I bring, provisions I bring, oil, stuff, everything you bring, external. Cooking, external. Eating, actual internal process. Therefore, my friends, buying provisions is worship. Buying all vegetables is namasmarana. Actual process of cooking, meditation, and the eating is samadhi or experience. Samadhi or experience. But we don't want to eat it. But what happens is, we go to certain malls or hotels, cafeteria or restaurants where behind the glasses you see sweets nicely kept there. All sweets. Most of the sweets we know. The moment we see them, we are very much attracted. Darshanat, Chitta Vaikalyam. But you cannot look at the sweets and say thank you and go. Unless you order for it and eat it, you will not get satisfaction. Or you get the menu card. Ask the bearer to get the menu card and you go through the different items prepared there that morning in the 5-star hotel. Oh good, thank you. Would you go like that? You have to order those items that you like and eat it. Therefore, my friends, our emphasis is more on purchasing vegetables. Our emphasis is more on cooking and no importance to eating. Therefore, we continue to be weak. We are weak because we are not eating. That's why the Upanishads clearly said, in one Upanishad, Ishavasya Upanishad, Bhunjidha, eat, swallow. Then once I swallow the curry or any vegetable, where is the vegetable now? Gone. Safe. Eaten already. No more when once it is swallowed. Similarly, Ishavasya Upanishad says, swallow too, so that there will be no more left. The moment you eat, the plate is empty. Likewise, empty two items. Bhunji da, swallow, eat. What are they? Name and form. Name and form. Come on, swallow. So that there will be no more of name and form left. Because name and form are the two that separate you from God. Name and form are the two that make you feel that you are different from God. Name and form are the two that make you feel that you are a separate entity all by yourself. The problem is because of this. When glass full of water feels it different from a tank of water. The tank of water and the glass of water are same. Only quantity difference. Both are H2O. Water in the glass is not H3O. Water in the tank is not HO, H2O. Therefore, my friends, quantity difference, name and form difference, but the quality is same. So, what is it that separates me from my God? Why do I not know that I am God? Though Baba says that you are God, I would always feel, allow me to be a human. I'm happy if you remain as God. Don't make me again a God. Because I cannot imagine that state. I cannot imagine that state of divinity. When I cannot imagine, how can I experience? Impossible. As it is not comprehended, as it not imagined, as it not visualized, we don't want to attempt also. Oh Baba, your God remain there. I am human. I will stay in the North Block. You be comfortable. Allow me to be completely comfortable. Why? The problem is because of name and form. Nama, name, form, rupa. Nama and rupa are the two aspects that separate the individual from the universal, that separate man from God. That's why Ishavasya Upanishad says, swallow both, name and form. Meaning, no more. Just a joke. When prasadam is distributed, some of us are very anxious to eat immediately the moment we receive it. But some of us find convenient seats sitting behind Bhagavan, and that we are not noticeable to the general public, nicely open the packet and put it safely in the world of the stomach. It's a nice job. I am also an effective practitioner in this. But our good God sometimes takes pleasure in inquiring, have you received prasadam? That day, he came straight, did you receive prasadam? Yes. Where is it? When he approaches you, everybody will be looking at you, and your embarrassing situation is made public, and Swami's comments will be broadcast and telecast. Then what will happen to our position? Then slowly I said, gesture, because I don't want anybody to hear. Just gesture. I ate Swami. Then he said, Amma, safe. It is safe. It is safe there, don't worry, it is safe in Almira. Therefore, my friends, when once we swallow there is no more prasadam there. Similarly, when one's name and form, nama and rupa, bhunjila, are partaken, no more of name and form remaining later. Then you will find the identity with God. Then only we will be able to understand that unity with the divine, that oneness with God. That is the message of Ishavasya. Then comes Kathopanishad. It also wants us to swallow too. Why this swallowing business? Because when you swallow, there will be no more. If you keep it separate, it still exists. If you keep it outside, you will be reminded of it. When it is gone, Harimu. Till this evening for another prasada I must wait. So my friends, it should be totally exhausted. That's the reason why Upanishad says, consume, partake. So, Kathopanishad wants two things to be consumed, partaken. What are they? I think I am serving some lunch 1 hour in advance. 2 items have already been served, the name and form. 2 items are remaining. This is Upanishadic menu, bistro. Yeah? So, this Upanishad, Kathopanishad wants us to consume two. What are they? One is prana, the life force, and other is manas, the mind. Prana and the manas, these two are to be swallowed. I see. Where is prana? Where is manas? Which is to be taken first? Which is to be taken next? Can both of them be be taken at the same time? What is the harm if I take one and leave the other? These are all questions. Naturally. Because Upanishad says, take both of them. How? What? When? How long? Now, my friends, life force, prana, life, vitality, vital force, is present in all the three states. While I am moving, there is life. When I am dreaming, there is life. When I am in deep sleep, there is life. Life is present in all these three states. That has to be swallowed, says Upanishad. If I swallow, what will happen? You have to see my picture in the newspaper under a different column. What does it mean? We'll come to the last thing. The second to be consumed is mind. Where is the mind? When we are here, there is mind, yes. In dream also there is mind. Though body is on bed, the mind is so powerful. The mind is so capable as to create me also there. Now I say, this my mind says, but there in the dream, mind will say, I am superior to you. Because that mind has created your body also there. Where is the body? It's on bed. But there in the dream, as if you have gone to the White House, Washington. Why not? Or as if you visited Hollywood or Bollywood or Jollywood or Tollywood or whatever. Or some will have other kinds of dreams as if they are put to torture, bitten by scorpions or snakes, poor fellows. They have to cry here, they have to cry there also. At least let us wish for good dreams. At least good dreams. Let us be happy there at least. So, my friend's point is, there is the mind in the waking state. Now, body is here, mind is here, both. But in a dream, body is on bed. Mind only remains, mind and life. In the waking state, three. Life, body and mind, all three. Whereas in the dream, two. The life and the mind. No body. Nobody can have the body in the dream. So, mind goes on dreaming everything. Of course, there is life. And the third state, deep sleep, what we call Sushupti. Sushupti is the deep sleep, where there is no mind, only life. There is no mind, only life. My friends, what is happening? There is no other interesting subject than this. Adi Shankara has dealt the three states of consciousness in all of his works. The highest visionary ever born in mankind. The head of Shankara, Baba says. So, Shankara's philosophy is based on this avastha-traya, or three states of awareness, or three states of consciousness. Therefore, in the waking state, the body, mind and the life. In the dream state, mind and life. In the deep sleep, only the life. Now question will come. How is it that mind has disappeared? What is it doing? How can it come back? Alright, in deep sleep there is no mind, okay. But when I get up, I have the mind. Where from has it come? Anybody stuffed into my head? Or has it fallen from heaven or not? Or something like an earphone. Have I kept my mind back there, collecting from the pocket? Where is the mind? My friends, kindly, carefully follow. This is the interpretation according to Adi Shankara, the greatest, Advaitist, the highest and the ultimate truth he conveys in his works. Adi Shankara, the ultimate in Sanatana Dharma or Vedanta. Therefore, but it requires some careful thought. But we got used to stories. Somebody comes and tells me, Anupar, would you tell me some story? What story? Further, some people say, would you tell me some latest miracle? Something like newspaper news, latest news. Therefore, we are not serious about it, and we are not going deeper into the subject. Baba repeatedly tells to most of us, how long would you like to continue at the elementary level? How long would you like to continue learning alphabets? How long would you like to continue seeing the pictures? When would you start reading books? When would you start getting into the depth of knowledge? When would you realize the truth of it? Why don't you go deeper into the subject? That's what Baba says. When Baba says that, my subject is in the form of a letter lying in my pocket. When to give this letter to Swami? He is my son. What to do? Therefore, my friends, at one time or other, we have to necessarily dive deep into Vedanta, not living towards the edges or the fringes. Let us go into this philosophy and experience it. Further, Bhagavan also said another thing. You expect only fish and shells on the surface of an ocean, while deep in the ocean are present precious birds. Birds are present in the depth, while fish shells are on the shore. How long would you like to spend your time? Questions Bhagavan. Therefore, let us try to collect those precious gems out of the ocean of knowledge. Now the question is, how is it that mind is not there in deep sleep? When it is not there, how can it come back when I wake up? The answer is simple. Mind is there in deep sleep also, but it is passive, silent, like CID people, CID officers. CIDs will be sitting among us. They will be hearing what all you speak. Then he will take care of you later. CIA agents, CID, Central CBI officers, they will be in disguise. They will be dressed in the same way as we are. Then at the right time he will show his identity and do the right thing later. Similarly, in a disguise, mind is present in a deep sleep. And that mind which is in a disguise, which is passive, which is functionless, which is rather simple and normal and not cognized, not recognized, not felt, that is what you call vasana. V-A-S-A-N-A. Mind is in the form of vasana, in deep sleep state, silent and passive. When the occasion comes, I will take care of it. Whereas the same mind, in this waking state, and in the mind, and in the dream, Mind is in the form of vritti. V-R-I-T-H-I. Vritti. Mind in the waking state and the dreaming state is in the form of vritti, while the same mind in deep sleep is in the form of vasana. I think I am clear. Vritti are expressive. Vrittis are expressive. Supposing I want to scold. Mind says, come on, scold. Mouth does its job. Of course, body receives later. Vritti, expressive. I want to write a strong letter against you. Hand is ready. Mind is ready. Write strong letter. And it will receive double dose subsequently. So, vritti, expressive. Even in the dream, I want to fight with you. And you are such a powerful fellow. I cannot fight with you. Let's meet in my dream. Not only fight, kill you also. It's my dream, why not? Therefore, vritti is expressive. So, expressive mind is vritti in the waking state and also in the dreaming state. While mind is rather latent, immanent, silent, passive, vasana in the deep sleep state. Shakti is not that cruel as to leave us at that state. Upanishad clearly tells you now. My dear boy, please understand that there is ocean. On the surface of the ocean you have got the waves, upsurging waves. The waves are born out of the ocean. Similarly, ocean is Chaitanya. Chaitanya, our constant integrated awareness. Chaitanya, higher consciousness. That superior consciousness is what the Chaitanya, Atma Chaitanya, that is the ocean. On that ocean you find one wave, which is the life, another wave, which is the mind. That's all. To think that mind is separate is wrong. To think that life is separate is wrong. What is correct thing? The life and the mind are the waves out of this ocean of Chaitanya or consciousness. Higher consciousness, the supreme consciousness. That's what is to be said. You see, when you stand here at the seashore, what will happen? Waves, and all waves go back. They come forward and they retreat. Similarly, when the mind goes back to its original source, when this life becomes just automatic, unaware of, with the feeling that it's just a wave, out of that consciousness, that is what's called samadhi. We think that samadhi is a separate state where we can sit straight until we develop backache. That samadhi is arresting of our thoughts. The more you want to arrest, more thoughts will start generating. Try today. You sit there, let me hard. Immediately you think your childhood. You think of your father-in-law who is yet to give you some more money. All these things will come. Therefore, my friends, here what I really want to bring your attention is that life is just unnoticed. Are we conscious of our breath? We breathe in and breathe out. Just a mechanical thing. No one says, I am taking in air. I am breathing out. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. Anybody says that? Why? Automatic, mechanical process. That very idea itself is life force going back to its source of consciousness. Life force is going back to its source of consciousness by realization of the fact that breathing is mechanical. That's a routine. That's swallowing the mind, what it meant. That whole function. The second, it also says, eat away your mind, swallow it, finish up. How to do that? Here the role of a guru. Here comes guru, an important factor. He can only turn your mind. He can only engage your mind, nobody else. Until Swami starts there, for darshan, we are so busy thinking of our rooms when we have to vacate. Feeling so bad for not having taken our breakfast. Very much worried about the queue lines near bookstores and the general stores. Very worried. By the time Swami starts giving darshan, what happens? Anybody thinking of anything? Nothing. Swami is coming. So, alright, you also get up and do. Can you control the thought of anybody? Swami, after all, what else you can? He has given darshan, that's all. Come on, you also give your darshan. Will anybody look at you? Seva will put you down. Can you draw the attention of everybody? Can you arrest, control the thoughts of everybody? Can you do it? Impossible. Because when we get up and walk, it is a nuisance. It's a nuisance. When Swami gets up and walks or gives darshan, all our thoughts are on him. All our attention is on him. All other deviating thoughts come to a stillness of the mind. Stillness of the mind is possible because of the Guru only, not by anybody. It is in this context, my friends, I wanted to emphasize the role of Guru in our spiritual path. Either to give up a bad habit or to cultivate a good habit, to purposefully turn the mind inward and to swallow those two, the name and form, Nama Rupa, as demanded by Ishavasya Upanishad, and to totally consume prana, the life, and manas, the mind, as required by Kathopanishad. It is in the hands of Guru. Whether to get into the hall, or kitchen, or bedroom, or guest room, whatever may be, there is a main door, keys have to be operated. The main door has to be open. It must be unlocked. Then we can go to any other room. That the keys are in the hands of a Guru. So he is the key man. Let us understand. Because sometimes people say, he is key man in our office. Today, evening he may be dismissed. That is our key. Sometimes we miss our keys. And there is also a fellow outside ready to make duplicate key. I order that fellow to make duplicate many times. He makes it. Soon after I pay him and as he leaves, I immediately think, what if he makes another duplicate key for him also, so that he can operate and enter every house? So, our keys are different. His keys have no duplicates. Main key is with him. So, the key has to be opened so that he can get into any hall. that key man is Guru. That main role is the Guru, the preceptor, Bhagavan, Sri Satya Sai Baba. We are prepared to celebrate Guru Purnima in this context of awareness as per Upanishadic literature, as per Upanishadic teaching. Further, if you go through Swami's lectures, you will find one thing. He is asking you questions, throws out volley of questions. Who am I? What for have I come? What is the purpose of life? What is have I have achieved? Am I the body? Am I the mind? Am I the intellect? Then what? Then who am I? These are the questions most necessarily appearing in his thoughts. Some of us may feel we heard questions before. Questions are repetitive. Answers have not been found out by any one of us. These constant questions. What is this body? What is this mind? What is this intellect? Who am I? These questions are contained in Kenopanishad. Kena, what? So, Guru Purnima calls for number of questions. Is there anything beyond the body? Is there anything beyond the mind? Is there anything beyond intellect? Is there anything beyond the life? Is there anything more? Is there anything even after a die that remains? What is the cause for rebirth? Kena, what? That's Kenopanishad. And then there's also an interesting where people come and ask questions. Because this being Guru Purnima, Upanishads are taught by Gurus. Upanishads are heard by Sishyas or disciples. Therefore I am drawing Upanishadic literature this morning. Questions are many types. There are many types of people who put questions. First type of questions are foolish questions. What does Baba eat? How are you ordered? Shame to say, some have asked me, how many times does he shave? Silly questions. 3, what does he do inside? Do you know what he is doing outside? If I tell you what he eats, are you prepared to eat same stuff? More tomorrow. He is only capable of eating that. That finger millets, ragi malt, just 1 spoon. I'll tell you what he eats. Come on, eat. Meet me tomorrow. If you are still alive. What does he do inside? He does so much of work. Can we do it? We feel exhausted watching him doing so much of work. So these are questions which are really substandard. The second category is only to know how much you know. How much you know. To testing questions. And third type of questions are only to exhibit one's own knowledge. He will allow you, you give the answer, he will say that's not correct, and he will give the answer. Then you will wonder why should you put the question when you know. Feeling that fellow is so inquisitive, he is so of publicity, egoistic, that he wants to come like a sprinkler. The third category. And the fourth category of questions are those which are put not listening to the answer to the first question, they are getting ready for the second question. They put a question, you give the answer, they follow half, Get ready for the next question. These are all horrible, terrible, whimsical, non-religious. Therefore, Upanishad clearly says one should have tapana, yearning, curiosity, inquisitiveness, anxiety, tapas, penance. But what is penance? Penance, tapas, is nothing but tapana, deeper yearning, total inquisitiveness. One should have tapana. Good question. Second, one should have shraddha, sincerity. I put a question, you start answering, I get away from there. Sir, someone is calling. we come across all these people, I think. I'm sure. Therefore, he has no shraddha, sincerity. First, tapana, the second, shraddha. The third thing required is faith. Faith, what you say. These three are required. So a guru tests whether you have these three or not. Then he will answer the question. If questions are immediately answered, that is a classroom lecture, college, university lectures. But in spirituality, they don't answer you immediately. They'll find out whether you deserve the answer or not. They'll find out your level of understanding. They will find out the motive behind your questioning. There is one Upanishad by name Prashnopanishad. Prashnopanishad. 6 disciples have put one question each to one master, Guru. The Guru's name is Pippalada. Pippalada. Pippalada, P-I-P-P-A-L-A-D-A. Pippalada is the name of the Guru. 6 disciples go to him and they want to question him. Who are these disciples? They are not ordinary people. They are Maharshis, sages. Disciples are sages. Then who should be the Guru? When disciple is so great, what should be the standard of the Guru? He should have been higher than that. And Guru Pippalada is higher level because he is Brahmaveta. Brahmaveta, the knowledgeable one. The knowledgeable one. The experiential one. The embodiment of wisdom. The all-knower. So, Maharshis come to Guru to put a question. In Prashnopanishad. You know what happens there? The Guru will say, wait for 1 year. Wait for 1 year. After reading Prashnopanishad, this episode, we have no reason to complain against Baba. When he says wait, you did same thing even before. Wait, that's all. When he says wait means what? We are not yet ready. He is ready, but we are not yet ready. We don't have sufficient appetite. We do not have sufficient capacity. Low voltage. How can you receive all that? Therefore, wait. That Guru Pippalada of Prashnopanishad wanted these 6 sages, Maharshis, to wait for 1 year. There are 2 reasons for this. First reason is, he wants to test whether they have tapana, the yearning, if they have shraddha, sincerity, and 3 viswasa, the faith. He wanted to test. Sir, does it need 1 year? Yes, even more. Because we have faith in the morning, we lose by the evening. Something like weather broadcast. Very sincere in the morning. Most insincere by the evening. So, yes, we have to wait. Alright. What is the second reason? These 6 sages are asked to wait for 1 year. And why these sages should go to that Guru? These sages are in the same stage as we are. What is the stage? They have learned one form of knowledge. What is called Aparavidya. Aparavidya, secular knowledge. The knowledge, worldly knowledge, the outer knowledge, and they have all things relating to worldly desires. God fulfills them also. So they have knowledge of Apara Brahma, God who fulfills your desires. Swami, I want passport, you will get it. I want visa, you will get it. Until such time, I don't want any. I want to eat that, come on. I want to eat that, have it. I want to eat one more, come on. Later, no more. So, we are all in this first form of knowledge, what we call Aparavidya. In this Aparavidya, we have the grace of Apara Brahman, the wish-fulfilling God, all worldly. Even spiritual field also, we have worldly desires. One interview, one chain, one ring, very good. Apara Brahman. But these 6 sages want to have the knowledge of Para Brahman, the attributeless, formless, nameless divinity, Para Brahman, the supreme consciousness. Who is the right man to teach? Pippalada himself. So, those people who have Aparavidya and experience of Apara Brahman, they want to have experience of Para Brahman, the divinity and the super consciousness. And the right man to teach is Pippalada. This is all contained in Prashnomanjari. And Pippalada, with this I come to close. What do you mean by Pippalada? Ada means the one who eats. Pippala is a fruit. So, Pippalada, the one who eats fruits. Meaning what? Fruits of one's own karma. The fruits of one's own action. So, this Pippalada Maharshi went on eating fruits of his own action. Meaning, no more. He is thoughtless. He is no longer the doer. He is no longer the enjoyer. He is not anything now. Thoughtless day. Pippalada. He has consumed everything. Vasanakshaya, Karmakshaya, Manolaya. Annihilation of the mind, withdrawal of the mind, complete. That is the level of Pippalada Maharshi, Brahmavetta, who replied the answers, questions of these 6 Maharshis on Paravidya, about Parabrahman, the supreme consciousness. Therefore, this Guru Purnami should take us to Upanishadic literature, should take us into the depth of the ocean of spiritual Vedanta, of spiritual inquiry, of spiritual depth for the fulfillment of our life. Let us not be happy by collecting the pebbles and some shells available on the shore at the superficial level of the sea, forgetting the precious gems, the Upanishadic literature present in the depths of that mighty ocean. May Bhagavan help us in the spiritual path with prayers to Guru of Guru, the teacher of teachers, the preceptor, Parabrahman, the super consciousness, divine, all divine, Bhagavan Sri Sat Sai Baba, to be with each and every one of us here and evermore. Sai Ram. जय बोलो भगवान श्री सच्चाई बाबा जी की जय बोलो भगवान श्री सच्चाई बाबा जी की साई राम। थैंक यू।